Heartwarming moment. Woman exposed injustice after 3 cops attacked, transformed court forever. In a small suburban paradise, known for its friendly barbecues and Friday night football games, Sarah, a humble single mother and devoted waitress, found herself in the eye of an emotional storm. As the sun set over her modest home, an ordinary evening transformed into a devastating reality when news broke. Her younger brother, a decorated war veteran, had suffered unimaginable brutality during a routine traffic stop. Sirens wailed in the background. Anger filled the air. Friends and family gathered, exchanging worried glances that spoke volumes. Sorrow mingled with outrage. The diner where Sarah worked buzzed with chatter all too familiar. Families huddled over steaming plates of pancakes and coffee, laughing, joking, the warmth of community wrapped around her like a soft blanket. Yet, beneath the surface, everything was changing. The news spread like wildfire, igniting a passionate fire within the hearts of those who knew Sarah and her brother. The tears in her eyes reflected the fear that gripped her heart, but they also shone with an unexpected determination. Her brother had devoted his life to serve and protect, yet here he lay, a victim of a system that was supposed to safeguard everyone. This isn't right, Sarah whispered, her heart racing. A bond began to form among her friends and neighbors, each one consumed by the need to act. They rallied around her. Their collective anger became a chorus of voices demanding justice. Sarah felt enveloped in solidarity, an emotion so powerful it made her believe they could make a difference. But then, she faced a gut-wrenching dilemma. Should she shield her children from this chaos or march forward bravely into the unknown? Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As rage over the incident simmered, protests erupted in the heart of their once peaceful town. Sarah's pulse quickened at the thought of marching beside her friends, but still, doubt crept in. What if things turned violent? What if her children saw something they shouldn't see? Yet, fueled by grief and love, she pushed those thoughts aside and took a step forward. She found herself standing shoulder to shoulder with the community, an ocean of faces united in purpose. But the police chief, a man accustomed to authority, stood unyielding. Sarah watched in despair as he attempted to silence the outcry, deepening the divide in the town. The struggles growled from the depths of hidden economic disparities and social disgrace. Then came the fateful court case that would shake everything. Pressured by countless community members, Sarah stood before the judge and jury, vulnerability radiating from her like a beacon. Tension filled the room, every heartbeat echoing the stakes at hand. She locked eyes with her children, their sweet faces full of confusion and anguish, urging her to find the strength to unveil the truth. Would she, a simple waitress with 2 babies at home, break her silence for justice? The courtroom held its breath, waiting for a revelation that could alter the course of her life and the livelihood of her community forever. As the courthouse doors swung open, a hush fell over the gathered crowd outside. They had come in droves, the townsfolk united in their desire for justice. Hashtags from social media trends danced on their lips, voices chanting her brother's name. Sarah stepped inside, the warmth of their support wrapping around her like a protective cloak, yet the chill of uncertainty coursed through her veins. The courtroom felt oppressive, like a heavy shroud cloaking every soul present. The judge sat at the helm, a stern gaze fixed firmly upon Sarah. She searched the sea of faces, each one held its own story, its own pain echoing through the room. She felt tiny, lost among the giants of the legal system. I can do this, she whispered to herself, summoning strength that felt almost foreign. With her heart pounding, Sarah stood to speak. Her voice trembled, but gained strength as she pushed forward. Each word was shaped by love for her brother and fury at the injustice he had endured. As she recounted his care for others, the sacrifices he made, her conviction wrapped around the jurors' hearts. He fought for our freedom. How can we let this stand? It was a plea, raw and genuine. The prosecutor, a stern woman with piercing eyes, countered with precise language, trying to discredit her brother's character and actions that fateful evening. The air thickened with tension. Sarah felt her resolve waver, her confidence flickering like a candle in the wind. Yet, just as doubt threatened to wash over her, she remembered her brother's laughter. He had always believed in standing up for what was right. I can't let his spirit fade, she thought. Outside, the crowd pressed closer to the windows, faces glued to the glass. Their murmurs filled her ears, words of encouragement reaching her no matter how distant they felt. During a brief recess, the tension was palpable. People crowded Sarah, their hands resting on her shoulders, urging her on. "You're doing this for him," they reminded her. A soft voice broke through, and Sarah turned to see her son, wide-eyed with concern. She knelt down, pulling him into a tight embrace. "I will always protect you, sweetie. This is important," she whispered, her heart aching with the weight of truth. Back in court, Sarah returned with renewed vigor. As she stood again before the jury, she chose to share not just the facts but her brother's humanity, painting a picture of a loving brother, a devoted soldier, a man deserving of respect and dignity. The atmosphere shifted. She felt it, the collective hearts beginning to crack open. But just as hope flickered like a flame, a looming figure entered. The police chief himself had taken a seat at the back, arms crossed, eyes cold. The air turned electric. Sarah dropped her gaze just for a moment, and doubt crept in again. Would her words be enough? Would they pierce the veil of authority that cloaked him so tightly? Suddenly, an unexpected voice rang out from the crowd, cutting through all the tension. "We stand with Sarah?" The chant started small, but grew into a thunderous chorus. The walls of the courtroom vibrated with determination. Sarah felt her spirits soar. Would they, united as they were, manage to pierce through the authority? Would her brother's story be told? And when the moment came, she knew she had to do something she never planned. What would Sarah reveal when the judge called for her final statement? The question lingered in the air, heavy with anticipation, as the audience held its breath, waiting for the truth to unfold. As the judge leaned forward, his gavel poised, silence enveloped the courtroom once more. All eyes were fixed on Sarah, her heart racing. She was standing at the edge of a personal abyss, one misstep threatening to plunge her into the depths of despair. The room felt impossibly vast, and yet all the individual faces, familiar, supportive, filled with hope, created a tether to the present. "Your Honor," Sarah began, her voice faltering momentarily, but catching fire with each syllable. "I didn't come here just for my brother. I came here for every person who has suffered in silence, for every face that has been dismissed, every life that has been stolen by the hands of those we trust." With each word, she felt the rush of stories, hers, her brother's, even those of strangers, propel her. Their pain surged through her like a mighty wind. My brother lived to protect. He swore an oath to uphold justice, only to find himself betrayed by the very people who claimed to be enforcers of the law. Tears welled up in her eyes, shimmering like stars against the darkness of her anger. She looked directly at the jury, and for a brief moment, she saw a change. The prosecutor's hard expressions softened, a flicker of recognition ignited in them. They were not just jurors anymore. They were human beings faced with a choice. "I urge you," she pressed on, the determination returning to her voice, "to look past the badges, to see beyond the uniforms. These are people, flawed, just like us. And my brother?" She paused, forcing herself to breathe. "He is more than just a statistic. He is my brother, and he deserved so much more." A murmur spread through the crowd, reaching her like a wave of solidarity. The police chief's features hardened, but Sarah refused to let the oppressive energy of his presence stifle her. She stepped forward, embodying the spirit of every soldier who gave their life for justice. The truth has no hierarchy. It has no badge, and within the shadows of authority, there are those who abuse it. We must shed light on this darkness. The room trembled with the weight of her words. She took another deep breath, feeling empowered by the noise from outside, the lingering chants echoing through her. She could almost hear her brother's laughter, echoing in the corners of her memory, giving her strength. She thought of her son, who watched with wide eyes, absorbing every moment. In his gaze, she saw the future. "I walk here today, not just for revenge, but for healing." Her voice cracked, but she pressed on with fierce clarity. For everyone who feels powerless, we need to transform this pain into something bigger, something that cannot be ignored. She felt every person in the room pulling together, a collective breath building. The tension was palpable. Sarah could feel the scales of justice tipping, the air crackling with potential. Maybe they could expose the truth here. Maybe they could honor her brother's legacy. Just then, Sarah's eyes met those of the police chief. A flicker of doubt passed over him, a crack in his facade. And in that moment, she made a decision. This isn't just about my brother, she stated. It's about every soul forgotten under the weight of oppression. I will not back down. I won't let either his voice or the voices of many be drowned out. The stirring in the crowd grew, breathing life into her words. And as the gavel struck to signal the end of her statement, Sarah stood tall, knowing she laid bare the truths that needed telling. But even as the murmurs of the jurors turned thoughtful, she knew the battle was far from over. She had revelatory information that could change everything. The very witnesses who had seen the attack on her brother were among the crowd, waiting for her cue. What revelations would she share from those waiting outside? The air buzzed with anticipation, and Sarah could feel the world turning in her favor. Would this be enough to turn the tide? The atmosphere in the courtroom shifted almost imperceptibly as Sarah turned toward the audience, her heart pounding with the weight of the moment. She could sense their anticipation, their hope, and it swelled within her like an electric current. She took a deep breath, feeling each heartbeat as a reminder of why she was here, not just for her brother, but for everyone watching, everyone fighting their silent battles. At the back of the room, she spotted them. The witnesses, 3 faces, etched with determination and fear, watching her with wide eyes. These were the people who had seen the terrible events unfold, the ones whose stories would bolster her fight. Their presence alone ignited a flicker of hope in her chest. They were her lifeline. "Your Honor," Sarah said, raising her voice again, this time with clarity that cut through the courtroom's tension. "I have more to share. There are witnesses here today who saw everything that happened the night my brother was taken from us. Their truth can shine a light where darkness has tried to hide." Gasps echoed in the audience. The murmur of disbelief moved like waves, and Sarah seized the moment. These witnesses are not just names. They are real people with hearts full of courage. They stood by, painfully aware of their own vulnerability. But they did not remain silent. They chose to fight back in their own way, just as I am today. She turned to the jury, searching for their eyes. It's time to bring them forward. It's time to listen to what they have to say. With that, she stepped back, nodding toward the witnesses. They hesitated for a moment, but then, buoyed by her unwavering voice, they stood up as one. The first witness was a young woman, her hands trembling slightly as she spoke. "I saw what happened. I was there. I tried to intervene, but her voice broke, and she looked down." Sarah's heart squeezed. The ghosts of pain echoed in that room. This wasn't just an ordeal, it was about reclaiming voices, one at a time. Another witness, a middle-aged man, stepped forward, determination etched on his brow. "I can't stand by any longer. My children deserve to see justice." His voice, steady and resonant, filled the room like a rallying cry. They deserve to know that the truth matters. The chief of police shifted uneasily in his seat, the tension palpable, the power dynamic shifting in the room. Sarah felt it, too, a crack forming in the armor that protected the authority figure who had brought so much pain. Hope bubbled inside her as she watched the jury lean in, straining to catch every word. Emboldened, another witness spoke, their voice clear and strong. "What happened that night was wrong. I won't forget it. And neither should you." The rhythmic thump of their heart mirrored her own, pushing Sarah forward as the witnesses poured out their accounts. Raw and unfiltered, Sarah felt a surge of pride swell up within her. This was more than just her fight. This was the beginning of a turning point. A realization settled over the courtroom that silence could no longer be an option. With every word exchanged, Sarah could sense a transformation occurring. Finally, the police chief's stoic facade began to crack, revealing a glimmer of uncertainty. The murmurs of the crowd swelled to a cacophony, a chorus of voices demanding justice. Sarah's thoughts raced as she felt the tide turning. But just when she thought she could catch her breath and enjoy this small victory, a sharp gasp broke through the noise, It was an unexpected voice from the back. But what if the truth is even darker than we thought? Every head turned, including hers. The tension thickened as the courtroom fell silent once again, awaiting yet another revelation. What awaited them now? Would Sarah be ready to confront the shadows of her brother's past? The voice hung in the air, heavy with implication. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. She glanced back towards the source, straining to make out the outline in the shadows. The tension in the room was electric, and she could feel it curling around her, tightening with every passing second. The murmurs of confusion erupted again. "Who said that?" someone whispered. The audience turned, eyes wide, searching as if the answer was hiding among them. Sarah's heart raced. This wasn't the time for distractions. They were so close to uncovering the truth. "Your Honor," she called out, squaring her shoulders, unwilling to let uncertainty derail the momentum. "May I inquire who just spoke? We cannot ignore this." She felt herself become the focal point, the room hanging on her every breath. A figure rose from the back, a man, gaunt and weary, his eyes revealing the depths of pain and experience that echoed in shadows. "I know things," he stammered, his voice wavering. "Things about what really happened. It's worse than you think." Sarah's heart plummeted, swelling with a mixture of fear and curiosity. "What do you mean?" She pressed, her voice steady despite the tremor of her heart. The witnesses stood with her, equally gripped by the moment. The man stepped forward, his hands shaking. That night it wasn't just a robbery or a simple mistake. Things were set in motion that had nothing to do with your brother. It was about covering up something bigger. Lost evidence, connections that run deep. Gasps filtered through the crowd. Sarah could feel the pulse of the room quickening. Everyone leaned in, starving for truths they had long been denied. "Your brother was caught in the crossfire of something that had already taken root," he continued, voice thick with emotion. "I didn't know who to turn to, and I didn't want to get involved." But now he paused, the weight of his words pressing heavily on him. "But now you're here," Sarah urged gently, wanting to draw out the truth that seemed locked within him. "Please, tell us what you know." "I was there," he said, tears brimming in his eyes. "I saw the way they handled everything after. It's deeper than just one incident. There are names, people who are tied to things that no one has dared to bring to light." Shuffling erupted in the gallery as whispers erupted into heated debates. Sarah's mind raced, thoughts colliding. Was the truth more horrifying than she had imagined? She could feel the power in the room shifting once again, but it was different. This wasn't just about her fight, her brother. It was about something larger, an epidemic of silence, the very fabric of injustice. "Your Honor," she declared, gaining strength from newfound clarity, "this changes everything. We need to explore this. We can't hide from the darkness any longer." The judge, visibly shaken, looked across the room, contemplating the chaos before her. Silence spread like a shroud as every person inside that courtroom awaited her decision. The weight of history hung between them, unresolved and potent. What if confronting these shadows meant exposing even more pain? And what if the truths unearthed could forge a path toward redemption? Just then, the man locked eyes with Sarah, a flicker of hope and fear mingling in his gaze. "But are you ready for what you might uncover?" he whispered. As the weight of his question settled in the air, she grappled with her resolve. Did she truly understand the implications of diving deeper? A soft murmur of anticipation filled the room as all eyes fell on Sarah. The next step was hers to take. Were they ready to face the truth, even if it burned? What awaited them could change everything they thought they knew. Would she have the courage to push through the painful revelations that loomed? The courtroom remained tense, the air thick with unresolved emotions. Sarah could feel every eye on her as she stood at the center, her heart pounding like a drum, a battlefield of uncertainty swirling within. The question hung over her like a damning shadow. Were they truly prepared to face the truth? "Your Honor," she broke the silence, her voice steady but her hands trembling slightly at her sides. "We need to hear what he has to say. This isn't just about my brother anymore." She glanced at the weary man who had bravely come forward. "It's about all of us, about uncovering a truth that could free us from this cycle of silence." The judge, still processing the weight of the situation, cleared her throat, her gaze piercing through the cacophony of whispers. "Very well," she said, finally, "but we must maintain order and civility. Speak your truth, sir." and know that we are listening." The man stepped forward, his shoulders hunched, a silhouette of someone burdened by scars that ran deeper than skin. "Tonight," he continued, his voice stronger now, "I want to make it clear. It wasn't just the police involved that night. There were whispers of corruption and collusion that extend far beyond what you see. Your brother was a pawn in a much larger game." Gasps rose again, louder this time, as the crowd bristled with disbelief and outrage. Sarah felt a fierce determination building inside her. "What do you mean? Give us names. We can't piece this horror together without knowing," she insisted, her voice rising above the fray. Tears filled the man's eyes. "There's fear in the shadows," he said, almost breathless. "Fear that stops people like me from speaking out. Fear that the system will devour anyone who tries to bring light to this darkness." His voice cracked, and Sarah could see the struggle on his face. "Your Honor, if it helps," Sarah interjected quickly, "maybe we should offer him protection? Whoever is behind this won't stop at just silencing him. We must create a safe space for all witnesses." The implications of his words washed over her as she imagined the growing list of people tied to this web of conspiracies. The judge paused, then nodded slowly. "That is a very valid point. We will arrange for his safety." The sense of agency tied Sarah to her cause, invigorating her spirit. "Right now, here in this moment, we stand together," she declared. "We're fighting against the very forces that have held us down for too long. We have to believe that truth will disrupt their power. Enough is enough." As the crowd slowly began to nod and murmur agreements, something shifted. An air of hope flitted through the space, bringing with it a flicker of unity. Lives could be changed, and perhaps hearts could heal. But just then, an unexpected sound echoed through the hall, a loud bang, like a gunshot, rattling the very foundations of the courtroom. The audience gasped collectively, turning as one, instinctively moving towards each other for protection. What was that? Sarah's heart raced, panic flooding her veins. And as the crowd began to press backward against the walls, fear took hold. In that moment, she knew they were teetering on the brink of something far larger. Whispers broke out once more, and the tension in the air morphed anew. Had their pursuit of truth stirred something more dangerous? What if they weren't just fighting for justice, but for their very lives? Sarah's breath quickened as she realized. In this tumult of revelations, they hadn't just opened a door. They might have unleashed a force that could change everything or end it all. What lay ahead was still unknown, an uncharted territory filled with endless possibilities and unimaginable risks. Would they confront this newfound danger together, or would fear force them to retreat once again? The loud bang still echoed in Sarah's ears, a sinister reminder of how fragile their newfound hope had become. She could feel the energy in the courtroom shift dramatically. The once tense murmurs were now a cacophony of fear and confusion. Sarah scanned the crowd, seeing panic etched on familiar faces, her friends, her family, and strangers who had come seeking justice. "Stay calm," the judge commanded, her voice cutting through the chaos. But Sarah could see the apprehension flickering in the judge's steady demeanor, the hesitation that spoke volumes of what was truly at stake. Everyone was on edge, hearts racing in sync with Sarah's own. "Did someone just shoot?" whispered a voice from the back, disbelief dripping over their words. Eyes widened. More gasps followed like ripples in a pond. The man who had come forward, the one who started this chain reaction of truth, dropped further into shadows and clutched his chest, visibly shaken. "Get down," someone yelled, instinctively falling into a crouch. The crowd pressed against one another as if they could somehow become one solid wall against whatever threat loomed outside the courtroom walls. Sarah's heart pounded louder than the cacophony around her. The sound resonated in her bones, drowning out everything else. Again, she thought of her brother and the sacrifices people were making for justice. Was it worth it if they were all at risk? "No, we can't let this be the end," she shouted, her voice rising above the din. Shaking hands moved to her chest as she took a deep breath, letting it fill her lungs, grounding herself in the reality of this moment. "We have to stand together. We can't give in to fear." But as she spoke, anxiety gripped the room. A few brave souls began moving back toward her. Not everyone was ready to embrace her rallying cry. The uncertainty clouded their eyes. Would they trust that the truth could protect them? Or would the oppressive weight of fear drag them under? Suddenly, the doors to the courtroom burst open, and a guard rushed in, breathless and wide-eyed. "Everyone, stay put." The noise came from outside. "We are secure." A wave of relief washed over Sarah, and for a fleeting moment, hope flickered again. But it was quickly overshadowed by the gnawing question. If they were standing on dangerous ground, how secure could they possibly be? "What is going on out there?" someone asked, a tremor in their voice. "There's been an incident, but it's under control now," the guard assured hastily, but his eyes betrayed him. Sarah could tell he was holding something back. "Why should we believe you?" Sarah pressed, stepping forward, emboldened by something deep within her. "The truth is exactly what we need, and if there's danger, you need to tell us so we can prepare." The guard hesitated, torn between allegiance to his job and the impending turmoil. As he opened his mouth to respond, a voice cut through the tension, slightly shaky but resolute. "The silence stops here. The truth needs to come out." It was the man who had been the first brave enough to step forward. "Whatever they may do to us, we won't hide in shadows anymore." The crowd stilled, absorbing his words. Little by little, they began to nod in agreement, a quiet rebellion sparking. For the first time that night, connections formed in the kindling of shared fear, transforming into solidarity. As hope mingled with fear, Sarah felt an undeniable sense of strength rise within. This was bigger than her brother now. It was about a community awakening, breaking chains of oppression through collective bravery. The guard cleared his throat. "All right, let us step outside and see what is happening." But as they prepared to leave the courtroom, something unnatural whispered against the tension in the air. A chill zigzagged down Sarah's spine. The fight wasn't just about revealing truth anymore. It was about pursuing it amid unknown threats. Even as they moved toward the door, uncertainty loomed. Would they face what lay ahead together, or would broken trust rend them apart once again? Sarah gripped the doorknob, hesitating for the briefest moment. Would the reality of what they discovered next solidify their courage or crush their spirit completely? With a deep breath, Sarah twisted the doorknob and pushed the door open. A burst of cold air swept over her, carrying the faint stench of smoke and fear. She stepped out into an unfamiliar world, where the shadows of the courthouse took on darker, more menacing shapes. People spilled into the hallway, faces strained under the weight of trepidation and anticipation. The guards flanked her, their eyes darting, scanning the chaotic scene beyond the double doors that led outside. Sarah glanced at the crowd that followed her, friends and strangers alike, a patchwork of determination and dread. She could almost hear their thoughts, their muscles tensed in unison, hearts beating to an uncharted rhythm. What awaited them was no longer a mere question of justice. The outside world had grown loud, voices raised in anger, confusion, and desperation. And the pulse of the community felt drummed up to a fever pitch, like a wasp nest disturbed in the quiet solitude of the afternoon. "Stay close," the guard cautioned as they began to move. "We need to find out what's really going on." The pavement cracked beneath their feet like the tension hanging thick in the air. They passed the smattering of scattered onlookers, all craning their necks toward where a flicker of red and blue lights danced across the trees, pulsing like a heartbeat in the distance. The excitement from inside the courtroom seemed to pale against the electricity of uncertainty pressing in around them. Sarah's heart raced. She focused on the figures ahead, battling to stay present. "We won't let fear chart our course," she whispered fiercely, though she wished she could believe her own words. Each step felt heavier, as if they were marching into an uncharted territory of risk and revelation. When they reached the front steps, a dreadful scene lay before them. Crowds of people were shouting, some pleading, others getting pulled back by police as they tried to push their way forward. Sarah spotted a news crew. Reporters stood, microphones raised, capturing each booming outburst and desperate cry from the crowd. "Outrage for justice." A journalist shouted into her camera, her voice strained and urgent. "We must know." Someone from within the throng yelled, their eyes lit with anguish. "What happened out there? What is the truth?" A hush fell momentarily, as if those words were an incantation summoning the most profound fears and hopes to rise. Sarah noticed the man who had encouraged her in the courtroom earlier standing close by, determination etched across his face. He was nodding as he listened to the crowd, the fire stitched back into his heart, reigniting the invisible thread connecting them. Together, she breathed, feeling the solidarity swell inside her chest. As they pushed to the front of the mass, the guard finally took charge, acquiring the attention of the crowd. "Listen up," he bellowed, cutting through the noise. "An incident occurred, but we're working to ensure everything is safe. If you disperse now, we'll update you with information as soon as it's available. We can handle this." Sarah winced at his vague assurances. He was like a rock spitting out smooth words amidst the jagged edges of reality. She caught sight of a figure in the distance, by the police cars, with a hand raised high, trying to rally the crowd. The energy shifted again, drawing their eyes to the man who seemed poised to challenge authority. "What do we do?" someone whispered behind her. Fear trembled in their tone like impending rain. Sarah faced the crowd, eyes bright and unwavering. "We ask our questions. We demand answers. We stand together." They were bound now, their hearts thrumming a shared melody of resilience. Fresh determination blossomed in the air, hearts of strangers now beating as one. But as the rallying cries filled the air, a new wave of police cars pulled in, sirens howling like banshees in the night. Would the truth finally break through in this storm? Would those seeking justice be further muffled? As the heavy tension hung over them, Sarah's stomach twisted. In an instant, fear threatened to overtake their collective resolve. What if this moment, so charged with hope, turned against them? Did they have the strength to face whatever awaited? What would happen next? The roar of sirens filled the air, drowning out the whispers of uncertainty swirling around Sarah and her companions. People pressed closer together, hands gripping forearms and shoulders as they steadied each other against the sudden chaos. A sense of urgency hung heavy, knitting them into one coalition of hope. "What is going on?" someone cried. The question coursed through the crowd like an electric current. Fear flickered in eyes that had once brimmed with courage. Sarah felt that tremor of worry resonate deep within her. She stepped forward, feeling a warmth rise in her chest, calling her to act. "They think we're here to start trouble," someone to her right muttered, voice a quiet tremor. The comment sent a chill down Sarah's spine. Would the police really turn against them, weaponizing fear instead of protecting them? But she couldn't fold inward like that. She had come this far. This moment felt pivotal. "No," she called out, raising her voice above the disarray. "We're here for truth. For justice." The clarity of her words opened a space for others. Faces turned toward her, a glimmer of hope igniting in the depths of their despair. The man with the raised hand stood tall, a pillar amongst the tide of emotions. "We want tea back down," he yelled, his voice booming like thunder. "Not today. Not ever." Sarah felt the weight of his conviction settle over them all. Like the ground beneath them, they began to shift, moving together, the crowd becoming a sea of steady movement, rippling toward the police line. As they advanced, flashes of cameras captured the transformation, the metamorphosis from fear to an unstoppable force. Voices rose, a melodic cadence echoing their shared desires. "Justice! Justice! Justice!" The chant bounced back and forth through the air, a rallying cry that fueled their hearts. "Step back!" Police officers shouted, their faces masked with apprehension. The officers exchanged glances, uncertainty bubbling beneath their hardened exteriors. "We're here to keep the peace." But could peace thrive on ignorance? Sarah panted, anger spurring adrenaline through her veins. She refused to let this moment be washed away under the insistence of authority. "We need to know," she shouted again, her voice unwavering. "What happened? Who will answer for it?" A momentary stalemate hung in the air as the two sides faced off. Sarah's pulse thrummed in her ears, mirroring the raw energy rippling through the crowd. Amidst it all, a figure emerged, a woman with solemn eyes and a determined gait. Her presence cut through the noise as she approached the police line, her solidarity and resolve palpable. She raised her hand, stilling the crowd, and said, "I have seen the truth, and it cannot stay hidden." Gasps filled the air. Sarah felt her heart race faster, an anticipation thrumming in her chest. The crowd had shifted, drawing closer to this new beacon. What revelation would unfold? "Who are you?" A voice called from the back, mingling apprehension with curiosity. "A witness," the woman replied, her voice steady and clear. "And I want he remained silent any longer." Sarah felt a spark of possibility ignite within her. Could this be the answer they'd been yearning for? Just as she opened her mouth to speak, a loud crash echoed behind them. The crowd recoiled in shock, heartbeats quickening in sync with the noise. And just like that, the atmosphere shifted again, tension tightening like a noose. What is happening? A voice trembled behind her, but Sarah stood firm, a flame igniting in her chest. They had come too far and fought too hard. They were ready for whatever came next. The truth was at their doorstep, but the path ahead was still marred with uncertainty. Would they find the answers they sought? And would this angry momentum carry them all the way through the storm? Fear slithered back, but hope held firm. What awaited them in the next moment? As Sarah stood at the precipice, the clash of emotions roared through her. The crowd from the courthouse filled the street, overwhelmed with tension, yet bursting with hope. A witness held the key to transforming everything. The woman standing before the police line towered like a lighthouse amidst a fierce storm. "My name is Clara," she began, voice steady. "I saw everything that happened to Sarah's brother that night." The world fell quiet. All eyes focused on her, as if the entire town held its breath. Each person felt the weight of her gaze, knowing they were all bound in this shared moment. Underneath the fiery resolve, Sarah felt a flicker of fear. What would Clara reveal? Would it be enough to shake the foundations they stood upon? She searched the crowd, reading anxious faces illuminated by the flashing lights of police vehicles. "Clara, please," Sarah urged, stepping slightly forward. "Tell us what you saw. We're ready to listen." The slivers of uncertainty flickered like shadows on the edges of hope. Clara inhaled deeply, grounding herself. The air was thick, almost electric, as she spoke, her voice breaking through the dread like a ray of sunlight. "It wasn't just a traffic stop. My friends and I were standing close by, and we heard things that still haunt me. They were covering up a crime, a deeper corruption tied to something that runs through every part of this town." Gasps rippled through the crowd, and an involuntary shudder sparked from Sarah's spine to the tips of her fingers. "What do you mean? Who's involved?" she pressed, desperation curling tightly within. "They were after someone else that night, someone connected to something bigger, and your brother, he got caught in the middle." Clara's eyes glistened with truth, anger and sorrow intertwining in her gaze. They didn't mean to hurt him, but the panic had spiraled out of control. They lied afterward. They lied to protect their own. A collective murmur rose and fell like the tide. Fear twisted within Sarah. "We need names, Clara. We need evidence," she shouted, voice striving to rally them as a cohesive force, as if summoned by her words. The man who had first spoken in court raised his voice. "We deserve accountability. We won't let fear hold us back. We stand together." His spirit reignited the embers of unity, awakening raw determination in everyone. The crowd roared in agreement, shaking the very ground they stood on. They were more than witnesses now, they were comrades, approaching a reckoning. The police, still lined up at the edge, exchanged glances of confusion, but the conviction in the crowd wasn't just noise. It was a storm ready to break. With newfound courage, Clara spoke again. "I have recordings, videos from that night." Hope surged through Sarah as Clara continued. "I'll release them. The truth has to be told, and there are others waiting to stand with us. Let us do this," Sarah cried, the words bursting forth from somewhere deep within her soul. "Let us knock down those walls." They were on the cusp of a revolution, an awakening spurred by the pain and injustice they had endured. But just as excitement heightened, another sound erupted, echoing across the street. An officer stepped forward, hand raised in defiance. "This can't turn into a riot. You need to disperse. We can't guarantee your safety." "No," Sarah shouted back, her heart racing, spirit unyielding. "This isn't a riot. This is our fight. We are not criminals. We are demanding the truth." As tensions escalated, something shifted within the police line. Faces hardened, some still resolute against her, while others flickered with uncertainty. Sarah took a deep breath, planting her feet firmly. "Do you want your children to live in fear? To feel helpless?" she asked, voice steady. "We need to be heard, for everyone who deserves justice." The crowd resounded in a roar. "We stand for justice." A ripple of change curled through the throng, igniting voices and hearts. And then a breakthrough. An officer stepped back, lowering his gaze. A crack appeared where authority once loomed imperious. Sarah sensed the shift, energizing her. Even more. Together, we can change the direction of this town. They will listen. Together, we can transform our pain into power. Now fueled by hope and unity, the community stood firm, an unstoppable force rising from the ashes of their struggles. What else can we uncover? She asked, excitement morphing into motivated courage. What other truths are waiting to break free? As the crowd clamored behind her, Sarah felt her chest swell with raw emotion. There was no turning back. Clara, the witnesses, and everyone who stood with Sarah faced an uncertain future, but for the first time, they felt the chains of oppression begin to crumble. And as dawn began to break on the horizon, illuminating the world around them, Sarah felt a radiant warmth within. They were ready for change, ready to confront the darkness. The path ahead was unclear, but hope thrummed like a heartbeat, strong, vibrant, and alive. And together, they would find their way. This was the moment they had been waiting for. This was their fight, and armed with truth, courage would light their way forward. Sarah raised her hand high, a symbol of solidarity. Together, we go forward. Together, we will be the voices that echo for justice. The chant rose once more, melding into a cacophony of passion. Justice. 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 And beneath that fervor, a new chapter began to unfurl, ready to break bounds and forge a path towards something transformative. With her heart full of hope, Sarah understood the strength of community, the eternal flame of resilience, reaching for the dawn ahead. Hope intertwined with belief, and they faced not just the promise of change, but the universal bond of humanity. As the crowd surged forward into the morning light, Sarah knew one thing for certain. They weren't just standing against injustice anymore, they were reborn as one unified spirit, ready to challenge everything they thought they knew. Their power was undeniable. Sarah turned back toward the community, tears glistening in her eyes, and finally shouted, "Now, let us claim our truth." The chorus of voices rose, transcending the moment, the sound of transformation echoing in their hearts, a symphony of change that the world could no longer ignore. Subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and support the content you love. Comment your thoughts and feelings about this incredible ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. You need to stand together for truth. Don't wait, not even one more second.